President. And history rarely sides with the censors. And one of the, this bill, the way it's come before this parliament as a knee-jerk response, I think is ill-considered, counterproductive and frankly dangerous. I think that what we've already heard from the government, that their banning of the swastika, the Hakenkreuz, last year has been totally ineffective, and in fact incidents of these, they call themselves National Socialist Network, these losers, or I'd call them clowns, losers as Mr Mulholland calls them, has only increased, because what's happened is they've goaded the government into a response, which they've responded once already with the ban last year, and now they're responding again. So firstly, the government set the precedent of banning symbols, at which their response was to immediately just change to another symbol, totally ineffective. And then now we're banning gestures. We're setting the precedent of banning gestures. Now, of course, these clowns last weekend thought they'd get in a last hurrah before the ban goes in. What I would say is dangerous here is I think that this is totally counterproductive, and I know that Liberty Victoria agrees with me on this. Mr Mulholland referred to their views on this. Banning expressions of someone's beliefs doesn't change those beliefs. Far more work is required to do that, and I don't think that banning the way that people express their symbols or gestures is going to in any way de-radicalise them. In fact, it's going to push them underground, give them the victim status that they crave, and most dangerously of all, I'm concerned that they're going to create a martyr here, because someone eventually is going to test this law. Is that really what we want here? Do we really want someone going to jail for this? Because I think that that would be wholly counterproductive. And on another note, I would note that there is a very, very clear tendency, primarily amongst the left, to smear anyone that disagrees with them as a Nazi, and this includes the government themselves. I can name a few instances of this, and this totally undermines what the government claims to be a serious view of this hateful ideology by smearing anyone that disagrees with them as a proponent of it. And I'll give you a very good example of this. Back in September 2021, there was a protest. It was out the front of the CFMEU office. There was a bunch of people down there, and I and a few of my staff went down there to watch what happens, because I go to protests a lot because I don't trust the government's view on things and I don't trust what the media reports. So I went to go and see with my own two eyes, and what I saw was a bunch of workers who were upset with their union. Now, the media only really reported on one thing that they were upset about, which was vaccine mandates. They were upset about another thing as well. They had two demands. The second demand got memory hold, but the second demand was that they wanted their lunch sheds reopened. They were upset about this right that they had fought long and hard for to get the lunch sheds, and they were upset that they couldn't use them. If you'll cast your mind back, you'll note that the week before that, they were actually going out on the street and setting up tables on the tram lines and stopping traffic because they were upset about their lunchrooms being closed, about the sheds being closed. Now, when this escalated, because these people were demanding that their union support them and that they wanted to march on Parliament and say that they wanted to go on strike until these demands were met. Now, the union clearly didn't want to go on strike, and what happened after that was there was this apparently coordinated campaign to say that there was Nazis there amongst the crowd. All the many unions put out media releases. The government even started talking about it. Everyone started talking about these Nazis there. Well, I can tell you, I was there, and I didn't see a single Nazi. In fact, they all looked like tradespeople, as far as I could tell. I didn't see any Nazis, and in fact, I got people calling up my office the next day. These were union members who were upset with the government. They were saying, my grandparents fought against Nazis, and I am outraged that the government would smear my union comrades as Nazis. They were absolutely outraged by what the government did, but went ahead they did. Now, fast forward to March this year at the Let Women Speak rally, where a group of women wanted to talk about what they saw as the clash of rights between women's rights and transgender issues. And this is an entirely legitimate discussion to have, and an entirely legitimate, something that these women wanted to speak about. I was there also to listen to what they had to say. I didn't hear anything that I would classify as hateful. But lo and behold, a group of men turned up, about a couple of dozen men dressed in black. I saw them. No one knew who they were. In fact, no one actually knew what Nazis looked like because people had been pointing at everyone and calling them Nazis for so long that we didn't actually know what they looked like. So everyone was quite shocked when they saw them unfurl some awful sign and start doing Nazi salutes. Many of the women that were speaking at this event were already being shouted down by people across the road, highly authoritarian activists who just simply want to shut women up that want to talk about this. But many of the women couldn't actually see these men who were standing sort of adjacent to them because they were worried about their own security issues. And what happened after that was absolutely appalling. The Premier himself started talking about how Nazis turned up and how these women are associated with Nazis, and lots of people started associating. These women that turned up to talk about women's rights were drowned out by a group of men who were going there and doing this, this crazy stuff. And by smearing people like this, unjustifiably, they've inadvertently, these people, and I include the government when I say these people, they've empowered these groups with this sinister ideology to cancel anything that they choose just by turning up. We have to clearly state, whether or not you agree with what the women were saying there that day, we have to clearly differentiate that this group of Nazi clowns that turned up had nothing to do with those women. They weren't organised women, they had nothing to do with it, they were totally separate, they got hijacked by it, and then that was the story and led to all these problems. Now, I know that Mrs. Deeming got criticised because she didn't call out these Nazis immediately, and she had the very principled response. She considered it a very grave accusation and wanted to make sure that she was actually correct before making that accusation. Well, I wish the government would take that advice as well, and many from the left, because I know many of the activists that were there shouting down at those women that day, they were calling them Nazis as well. Maybe people should think twice before throwing that accusation, that grave, grave accusation about the hideous ideology that has caused so much harm to so many people. Maybe people should think about it a bit more. But I think that what we're doing here, what this Parliament is doing here, by setting a precedent of banning symbols, is dangerous, it's counterproductive, you're going to create martyrs, unfortunately, and I just think that this is exactly the wrong way to go about de-radicalising these people. I know that there's many other people that agree with me on this. Many people are too scared to speak the truth about this stuff, but I will be opposing this bill. I think it's counterproductive. I think that there are better ways to do this. I think that this is a knee-jerk reaction. It's poor legislation, and it should be condemned. Being a libertarian is sometimes described as like being the only sober person in the car and no one will let you drive. The government is driving us into the dark.